Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back with another episode of the Libertarian Censored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Censored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have Harris campaign, Vance already disaster as Trump VP pick from thehill.com by Donald Key, and I said political campaign attacks opposing political campaign, more at 11. It's customary that, the opposing political campaigns attack each other, and this is not an exception to that, But it's meant to be kind of like, Reddit at this point is kind of like AstroTurf's very hard for Kamala, and hopefully people start to catch on with how hard the AstroTurfing is as the year goes on. Then we have richest members of Congress across the interesting as fuck subreddit by Donald Key, and let's see, Rick's members of Congress. So there's Rick Scott, 327 million, 249 million Vernon Buchanan, 248 million Nancy Pelosi, 245 million Mitt Romney, 215 million Darrell Issa, 195 million Mark Warner, 178 million Daniel Goldman, 162 million Pete Ricketts, 126 million Susan Dublin, and 114 million Donna Byer. And that's just good. And the average congressional salary is only $174,000. And yeah, that just goes to show you that Congress, and I would say government and politics as a whole, is pretty much only a grift at this point. It's just a way for the elites to give themselves free money, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have marijuana contains alien DNA from outside of our solar system. That's confirmed from IffelScience.com by CH4Locks. And I didn't comment on that one, but I don't know. I guess I don't know how you would prove that, but if NASA wants to say that, I think they should be able to. But I personally would be skeptical of how would they be able to even get DNA from outside of our solar system in the first place. That's what I would ask, and that's my thoughts on that. Then we have a woman who took an abortion pill was charged with murder. She is now suing prosecutors from abcnews.go.com by Ninja Lover. And yeah, I don't think you should be charged with murder for doing something to your own body. But that being said, it's a trick, very very confusing line between what counts as murder and what doesn't count as murder when it comes to abortion. I personally think it should be all, as long as it's inside of the woman. It shouldn't count as murder. With that being said, it ultimately comes down to who has the force and social and economic capital to do what, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have pollster finds astounding change in Democratic electorate since Harris's ascension from FoxNews.com by Ninja Lover, and they quoted from the article, only 37% of Biden voters were enthusiastic about him in early July. Now 81% of Harris voters are enthusiastic about her. Democratic pollster Mike Bosian, who conducted the survey for Republican pollster David Lee, told the Journal that this is an astounding change. And I personally think that's kind of because she's in the honeymoon period right now. As the weeks and months go on, I think you'll definitely see her get hit more and more with people start to catch on to how she's really not a good candidate, just like it happened in 2019 when she dropped out before the Democratic primaries even started. And that's my thoughts there. Then we have direct attack. Trump said to be prepping much bigger instruction after rally comments from RawStory.com by American MWAF. And that's a crosspost from the U.S. News Hub subreddit. And I said, Orange Man Bad, day 3,330. And I added, I don't even like the guy. I'm just tired of the Trump bad circle jerk. My parents have gotten really bad at it, especially if the new you will never have to vote again, quote, and they are trying to bully me into voting for Kamala. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, isn't it odd? And that was a self-post that I made, and I said, for a split second, it looked like the corporate media was interested in speaking truth to power in regards to the Democratic Party. Then Biden released his letter, and now we're getting stuff like this. I linked to an article from Scientific American, what a Kamala Harris presidency would mean for science. As the daughter of a cancer researcher, Kamala Harris would bring a lifelong familiarity with science to the presidency, experts say. And I added, it feels like I'm back in 2016, only instead of coronating Queen Hillary, the media is trying to coronate Queen Kamala. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Hopefully, we'll see if it turns out like the election of 2016. It does feel very much like a 2016 redux, but I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. Then we have lawsuit. Princeton student suing after kangaroo courts led to suspension in July 2024 from Leaf, and that's linked to the Substack article I think they might have done by Tony Araxis and then from Tony Araxis and Substack. And I would agree, ultimately, you need to hold the courts accountable when they overstep their authority, especially if it's these Title IX kangaroo courts at the colleges. And I would agree with the decision to sue after because those courts will always find you guilty no matter what, pretty much. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, this is something I would fight for. All rights come from community of humankind from American MWAF, and that's crosswords from U.S. History subreddit. The Second Bill of Rights, proposed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, January 11, 1944. Every American is entitled to the right to a useful and remunerative job in the industries of shops or shops or farms or mines in the nation. The right to earn enough to provide adequate food and clothing and recreation. The right of every farmer to raise and sell his products at a rate of return which will give him and his family a decent living. The right of every businessman, large and small, to trade in an atmosphere of freedom from unfair competition and domination by monopolies at home or abroad. The right of every family to a decent home. The right to adequate medical care and the opportunity to achieve and enjoy good health. The right to adequate protection from the economic fears of old age, sickness, accident, and unemployment. The right to a good education. I said no one has the right to anything. No one has the right to the labor of others, and a lot of these cross into that. FDR was arguably one of our most socialistic presidents, and that's why I personally think he's probably one of our bottom 5 presidents, especially when it comes to how his New Deal led to the a larger government and more government for justification of authoritarianism when it comes to economics. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have I'm Shocked. Well, not that shocked, from Libertarian Party Pennsylvania on Twitter, and I posted that, and that was them quoting a Daily Mail article. Kamala Harris's top VP pick is dragged into shocking sexual harassment cover-up fight as rival makes haunting prediction. And I said, I still think they will go with him. Then they can blame anti-Semitism in addition to racism and sexism when they lose. Probably why I can also see them going with Pete Buttigieg and blaming homophobia. And I also found out another link for more bad news for Shapiro. Lending report tweeting, breaking, Pennsylvania teachers unions have been accused of laundering $1.5 million into Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro's campaign, a top contender for Kamala Harris's VP pick. And it just goes to show you they really are pretty much all corrupt. But, people will ignore it when it's their own party. Just like, Reddit will never dare call out a Democrat like Josh Shapiro for being corrupt. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have women's prisons have served their time. They should be abolished from The Guardian. And I posted that, and I said, I take it a step farther. Abolish women's everything. Nobody seems to be able to define what a woman is anymore. And then CH for Locks replied, #accidentally woke. And I replied, it's the world we live in now. And I linked to a tweet from Defiant Els. 2 inmates at all women's New Jersey prison are pregnant after both had sex with the same transgender inmate after local ACLU chapter when battle to house trans inmates in women's prison. And that's just the world we live in now. It's increasingly impossible to tell what reality is and what satire is anymore because the line's so blurred at this point. No one even knows what's true anymore. Pretty much anything might as well sound true at this point. That's how far everything's gone in regards to all the woke stuff, I would say. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, there is no law so obscene that the police would not be willing to enforce it, up to and including the mass execution of innocent children, at Michael Malice from Zay on Twitter, and I posted that, and that was them quote tweeting James Melville. They did this to an unvaccinated child, never forget this in humanity, and that was the cops bullying an unvaccinated child. And I said in response, the people who push for this will call you the fascists, though. And that just goes to show you that, people don't like authoritarianism until the TV says it's good at authoritarianism, then they'll bend over backwards to justify it, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, she has my vote, she doesn't like to follow the law, and she promises to put Trump in his place. She will lead our country by locking up the Constitution by Chad Muffin. That was an article they posted, headline they posted how Kamala Harris fought to keep nonviolent prisoners locked up. As California Attorney General, she spent years averting a 2011 Supreme Court ruling requiring states to reduce its prison population. The overseeing judicial panel nearly found the state in contempt of court. And that just goes to show you that, Kamala is definitely not on your side, and I'm glad to see some people realizing that. And I definitely think her campaign will sour as time goes on, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Biden called for changes to the Supreme Court and presidential immunity. By Lemon Limelight from the New York Times, Biden called for changes to the Supreme Court during Austin visit. President Biden is expected to deliver remarks on Monday, pushing for legislation that will bring major changes to the Supreme Court, including imposing term limits and creating an enforceable code of ethics on the justices. His speech will propose overhauling the court, an effort that requires congressional approval and has little hope of gaining traction in a Republican-controlled House and divided Senate. Mr. Biden is expected to argue the current system of lifetime appointments for the Supreme Court justices gives the president undue influence for decades. He will propose a process in which the president will appoint a justice every 2 years to spend 18 years on the bench. Mr. Biden supports a code of conduct that will require justices to disclose gifts, refrain from public political activity, and recuse themselves from cases in which they are responsible for financial or other conflicts of interest. He will also call for a constitutional amendment that could limit the broad presidential immunity that the court's 6-3 conservative majority back at the end of its term last month. The amendment would state that the Constitution does not confer any immunity from federal criminal indictment, trial, conviction, or sentencing by virtue of previously serving as president. And I personally think, I guess that's some decent legislation. I think, I do think we should try and hold the Supreme Court accountable, just like we should hold all the branches of government accountable. With that being said, I don't think he'd be saying that if the court was 6-3 liberal instead of 6-3 conservative currently, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Hulk Hogan Gawker lawsuit funded by Peter Thiel, PayPal co-creator from ABC News on YouTube, and that was by Winter Trabex, and I couldn't reply to that one since they had me blocked. But with that being said, personally, I do think Gawker did have the right to free speech when it came to linking Hulk Hogan's sex tape, just like Alex Jones had the right to free speech when it came to Sandy Hook. But that being said, ultimately, Gawker is definitely not on my side. Reddit used to despise Gawker, but now you have a lot more of the kind of woke people like Winter here saying, "Oh, this is something bad that Peter Thiel did." Well, in reality, I would argue this is probably the best thing he ever did, if you ask me. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.